Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Barry Jordan. I'm the project manager for DSI. Our company has been engaged by OSSI to help develop an enterprise grant management system. Really a fancy way of saying we're putting grant applications online, and we have a system that's going to allow you to complete applications and reimbursement requests online. Before we get started, I'd like to ask Richard Rowley to come up and give a welcome from OSSI.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Richard Rowley. I work with the Office of Grants Management and Compliance, and it's been my pleasure to work with the Enterprise Grants Management. Welcome. Come on in.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Pick up one of those blue books from on the table for me, please.
So we all work in grants, and I have heard a lot of the concerns from our stakeholders, right? Like our LEAs, community-based organizations, and even our institutions of higher education. We've been focused a lot lately on compliance and kind of getting everything in order. One of the things that we're really excited about is that EGMS is one of the few things, well, not few things, but one of the most important things that we have is looking forward to kind of free up a lot of your time. We do know that you are very occupied with the things that you do with your daily responsibilities. We know, especially at the CBOs, the community-based organizations, that there's not a lot of people on staff all the time, and so anything that we can do to help you get your processes done quicker and faster will basically, what I really like is it will free up time for us to help the learners in the district, right? So, and what do I love working in grants management because I get to give, I tell my mom this and she tells all of her friends this, but she's like, my son, he works in the district in Columbia and he gets to give away money for everyone to learn, and she loves the fact that, and I love doing it too because we see the numbers all the time. I work right next to data. They tell us all the time where it is that we're advocating, how will we improve. Well, EGMS, we really hope will be able to free up a lot of your time. Today, Barry's going to talk about two of the features that we're going to change in the district. That's going to be the application. I'm not sure, how many of you have more than one grant? Almost everybody, right? Everyone, nearly everyone has more than one grant. Or at least even with the one grant, what we're doing is if you have more than one grant, we have this electronic warehouse that you're going to be able to go to and find all the grants that are available to you now. So you may have seen something, seen one of the notice of funding availability in the register or somewhere else, or heard it from somewhere else. Right now, you will get your credentials and you'll be able to log into the system and see all those that are available. See, all the applications that we have from OSSI are now electronic and online, which is great news. One of the other kind of questions that we get is, where are the applications? So that's taken care of now. But the other question, and probably the more important question for you is, you may have called in and asked, hey, I submitted my reimbursement. Where is it? I don't know where it is at. What stage is it at? Did you even receive it? So what we have now is an online reimbursement process, where is that you'll be able to submit everything online. You'll also be able to submit documentation for it. And once you submit it online, you'll be able to see that the date that you submitted it, and then you'll also be able to see the date that an OSSI person reviewed it. So, and then once that, it'll have a final date for that, and it'll show when it is that we sent it out as a batch to SOAR in order to be checked for you. So, I know that right now, I think that the date that we have for the timeline we have is right around 30 days or 32 days, maybe 35 days that you can expect to have that back. We really anticipate that EGMS will cut that down. Some of the other features that are not going to be discussed today, but that we're working on, are going to include calendaring, monitoring, and also reports. So we can find out a little bit better where our money is going in the district. So thank you all for coming up and showing up here. One of the dates that I do want to let you know of is for coming up here in June. If you're with a local education agency, LEA, we do have a conference coming up on the 11th, and if you, we have another conference for community-based organizations, just focused on the concerns because both organizations have different interests and different concerns. That conference is coming up on June 25th. I don't know if anyone went last year. We had it over at the Mary Mormon. Yeah, it was a pretty fun conference. It was very, very informative. We're anticipating that will be the case this year. We expect that after today, you'll get a good introduction to the system. You'll be able to better understand grants management through EGMS, but then at the conference, we'll have more specialized opportunities because you'll most likely have, we will be releasing Some of our, quite a few of our formula grants pretty soon, and then we're going to be releasing some of our competitive grants shortly afterwards. You may have, once we hit June 2nd, you'll have your credentials and be able to get into the system and start applying for some of the applications that appear there. So that'll be June 2nd, and then June 25th, we might be able to help you with some of your applications if you get stuck at a certain point, or be able to better explain also some of the other processes and the features that we have so far. Again, I'm Richard Rowley with the Office of Grants Management Compliance. I'm on the 9th floor if you guys have any questions for me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I am actually going to be heading out right now, but I will be returning, and so we can chat during breaks. All right? Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Before we get started, I'd like to take a couple minutes and just have the participants in the room just state your name and what organization you're representing.
Good morning. I'm Catherine Roboff, and I'm a higher teacher. Good morning. I'm Karen Beth. I'm with Learning Management Resources.
I'm Isabel Mack, and I'm with the Henry C. Gregory III Family Life Foundation.
Wonderful.
We're in the Harris Kids Comprehensive Services.
I'm Ashley Davis. I'm here with Mark Beginning.
Okay.
Doris Queen, Bright Beginnings as well.
Wonderful.
Dr. Dunn, Consortium for Child Welfare.
Wonderful.
So Juan Mack, City Academy Child Development.
Wonderful. So that's so welcome again, and welcome to our online participants. Suresh, can you turn the light off for me, please? So what are we trying to do today? We've had introductions, expectations for today. Today is the first introduction to a lot of you about the Enterprise Grants Management System. I want you to be relaxed today. I'm going to be walking you through the system, its components, how to log in, how to get to an application. So today I really want you to get comfortable with what's about to be introduced. As we go along, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to raise your hand. As Richard said, the system is going to go live on June 2nd. Today is the last training session prior to launch. But at both of the grant conferences, there will be training sessions that go on simultaneously with the other content that's being provided. The LEA conference on June 11th and the Community-Based Organization Conference on June 25th, both will be held at Gallaudet University. And you should have received notification of the conferences. There will be someone from the OSCE staff team down here later on today. If you have not registered or haven't gotten information, they can provide you the information. We're going to talk about Phase 1 assurances and completion of central data requirements. And some of the information I'm going to share with you, some of you may only be doing competitive grants. Some of you may do formula grants as well. So you'll have a very good understanding. The application that we're going to focus on today is a competitive application, but some of the kind of system-wide information carries over between formula and competitive. We're going to understand how the system shows deadlines. We're going to walk through completing a funding application. We're going to see how OSCE responds to you when a application is returned or if a reimbursement request is returned. And then we're going to complete a reimbursement request. Okay, you may be familiar with reimbursement workbook, where the new nomenclature, for lack of better terminology, is reimbursement request. So when you leave today, I hope you understand how to request new credentials, that you understand user roles, what the user roles are and what they can do, how to log in, how to create and submit central data collection requirements, how to complete general assurances and Phase 1 assurances for those that it's applicable to, how to create and submit a funding application, viewing comments from OSCE, and also creating and submitting a reimbursement request. Okay, so generally speaking, what's the system? Okay, the system is comprised of a login screen. Once you log in, you'll land on a landing page that will give you options to go to specific areas within the site. We have an area called Central Data. Everyone is required to go to the Central Data section and complete information. It has general information, and this is organizational administrative-wise for your organization. And you have this chart in the book, so you guys can take notes on that if you like. It's general information for K-12. There are learning support initiatives. Learning support initiatives are 1 to 15 focus areas that your organization has that you're going to drive all of your grant dollars towards. And you'll find that in this new mechanism that's been put in place, once you identify your 1 to 15 learning support initiatives, again, this is K-12, and it's most grant programs, but not all. Those 1 to 15 items will flow down so that when you're developing your budgets, you will say, here is my budget line, here is the initiative that this budget line is going to go towards. Okay. For early learning, there will be, and that's pre-K, there will be learning support objectives for early learning. And that's 4 primary objectives that all your activities in pre-K have to go towards. And the structure is the same. They will be identified for you, and then on your budget line items, you will select which one of those 4 primary objectives that budget line item supports. There are assurances as well. What we've attempted to do in this system is to collect all the global assurances that span across all grant programs. Drug-free workplace, no guns, those sorts of things as general, debarment, etc. We have in the central data section. And the attempt is, once you agree to those assurances one time, you don't have to agree to those same assurances every time you complete a grant in the system. Now, there will be grant-specific assurances that are non-general, but once you agree to your assurances in the central data area, you don't have to agree to them again. And in the case for the NCLB consolidated application and IDA Part B, they have their own set of assurances as well that you will agree to as part of what's called a Phase 1 submittal. Yes?
So for the assurances, you said once you agree one time, you don't have to do it again. What about for the early learning support objectives? Is that great?
You're gonna set those up first. Those are the guiding objectives of your organization. And they are preset for you. The department here has worked to determine where pre-K should be spending their grant dollars. Okay, as opposed to the K-12 learning support initiatives where the organization itself will develop them and drive all of their funding in those areas. Okay, good morning, how are you? Grab up one of those books from the left on the table, and there is a sign-in sheet floating around somewhere. Okay, so once we get through the central data section, we can then create an application. An application typically is comprised of a narrative. Again, there may or may not be some application-specific assurances, which you will see, and then you will be able to. Good morning. You'll be able to develop your budget and then submit an application for review and approval. So I'll tell you, our job was to take, paper-based applications and create its web cousin. Okay, so in most cases, the content that you see will be very familiar to you. Okay, you will have seen the questions before. What you won't have seen are some of the mechanisms. We may have a radio button that provides a checkbox. We may have a drop-down menu that has several items that you can select. So getting comfortable with the application is more getting comfortable with how it looks now and how we've broken it down than the content. So the content that we've put online is the same content that's been in the application, unless the Department of Education has required some changes from last year's application. Okay? Now, the difference between a competitive application and a formula application. When the application says that it's due on Friday at 2:00 p.m., okay, you will see a submit button in the system up until the time that you see 2:00 p.m. flash on your screen. Once you see 2:00 p.m. flash on your screen, if you have not submitted your application, the submit button disappears. Okay? If your files haven't been uploaded, if you're waiting to check something and the time, you see the time on screen, it's too late. The system removes the submit button and you're not allowed to submit for that competition. Okay, and I'll be repeating that several times through today's conversation because the system really takes out the human, let me run to the office to give that document to someone part. You can sit anywhere in the world with internet access and complete and submit an application, assuming you have all the requisite information available to you via your computer. Once the application is submitted, OSSI will review it. A couple things could happen. You may get notification that your response is non-responsive. Thank you for submitting your application, but there'll be no funding at this time. You may get notification saying that congratulations, your application has been accepted and you will receive funding. Or in some cases, you may get notification saying, congratulations, we are going to fund you, but we're going to give you more than you requested or less than you requested based on the program requirements. Okay? And once you get that, you'll be able to submit reimbursement requests. I want you to notice, once you submit reimbursement requests, OSSI personnel can return it to you through the system for revision. When you submit your application as part of a competitive grant application, it's either right or it's not. There is no return for resubmittal. No one's going to call you to ask more questions. Whatever you submit is whatever you submit. Okay? So let's talk about logging into the system. We are creating a public-facing web page for OSSI. It's going to have these components. It may look slightly different. There'll be an area that has general announcements, information, notices about training, when NOFAs become available, notice of funding availability. There'll be a section, a scrolling calendar that tells you when grant applications will become available or when they're due. And we'll have a log on section. OSSI has sent notifications to all its registered organizations requesting a preload of usernames and roles. Are you guys familiar with that? Yes? Oh. Okay, before we leave, we'll have you see Richard or Nancy. Richard? Yes. Okay, Richard's in the back, for those of you who may have missed him in the beginning. If you haven't submitted that information, we'll see Richard. So this log on section, this is available to the public. The log on section, if you have a username and password, you'll sign in here and you'll have access to the system. If at the time of June 2nd, you try to log in, you don't have a credential. If your organization is already registered with OSSI, you'll click the link. It'll say type in the organization's federal EIN. You type in that EIN, and it'll say, okay, John Smith is your security administrator for your site. Please contact him. John Smith will be able to log into the system and automatically create a username and password for you. Your username will be your email address in this case. For those organizations who have not been registered with OSSI, when you select new user and you type in your federal EIN, it's going to say, I'm sorry, we don't recognize it. We need you to create a registration for your organization within OSSI. What's going to happen is it's going to take you to a link to the IRS website to download and fill out and sign a W-9. And there's also a supplier data collection template that OSSI requires to be downloaded, filled out, signed. You'll attach those back to your request. That information then will be sent to a representative at OSSI for review. And once that's reviewed, your name and the people's names that you put on that request will be sent notifications that either congratulations, you've been awarded credentials, or we're sorry, we cannot award credentials to you at this time because of. Okay, that process can take up to 48 hours. Okay, remember, if the deadline for your application is 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon, you cannot wait until the day before or 2 days before to register, to hope to register for the system, if your organization hasn't been in the system and have time to submit your application. Okay, let's talk about user roles for a moment. For LEAs and community-based organizations, there are 3 primary roles. The role that's the highest level role within an organization is called the authorized representative. The authorized representative can get into any web page, can control access to an application, lock it down or unlock it. And that's the only role within an organization that has the authority to agree to assurances, submit an application, or submit a reimbursement request. Okay? Data entry roles, usually the folks who are actually completing applications, completing reimbursement requests, data entry role can do everything in the system except agree to assurances, submit an application, or submit a reimbursement request. And then there's a view-only role. View-only role, you can get into every page, you can walk around everywhere within the system, but you cannot enter data and you cannot submit. And the organization will have to determine on its own who gets these roles. You can have 1 or more authorized representatives, you can have 1 or more data entry folks, and you can have 1 or more view-only representatives. That's really up to the organization. So this is our current login, which will change once the system launches on June 2nd. So once you log in, you'll come to this, what we like to call a landing page. In this particular case, this role has access to central data and common assurances, phase 1 assurances, funding applications, and other data collection. As we add functionality to the system, if your role allows you to, you'll see multiple points that you can go to within the system from this landing page. Okay, so this is what you're going to see when you first log on to the system. Okay, we've created a blank application, so to speak, and let me do this. All right, so when you come into the system, if your system looks like this, it's not broken. Okay? I want you to notice these triangular shapes, we call them chevrons. You'll see these shapes throughout the system. It's really a drop-down pointer. Okay? So at this view, it collapses everything beneath it. So I'm going to open it up. Okay? So what we see here is, in this particular case, there's central data that has been created. And someone has started an IDA Part B consolidated application. It is an original application. It has not been submitted. Okay, and as you can see from this tab, you can open this application, you can amend it, you can go to payments, review summary, or you can delete the application altogether. Now, in this particular case, since I'm controlling the environment, I want to delete the application. Okay, it's gone. There is no undo button. So if you're working in an application and you decided you want to trash it, when you hit delete, it's gone. Okay? For formula applications, your allocations will still be available if you now open a new application. But for competitive applications, once you delete it, it's deleted. Okay? So in this central navigation pane, you will see whatever has been created, central data, formula grants that you've applied for, competitive grants, continuation grants, any maintenance of effort applications, spend plans. And then we have at the bottom, well, what grants are available. So as Richard alluded to earlier, you know, in the past, it was probably fairly difficult to go to any one location to know which grants are available and open at any one time. When you come to this navigation page, you'll be able to see what formula grants are available and what competitive grants are available. So again, you'll see the grant name on the left. In the center column, you see a submissions due by date. When the system launches, you'll see system due by this date and this time. Again, if you're working at your computer and the application is due at 2 o'clock on Friday and you see 2 o'clock on Friday pop on your screen and you have not hit the submit button, you're out of luck. Okay? Again, let's go to the chevrons for a moment. So if you select a chevron next to any of these grant programs, you're going to get one of two things. In this particular case, these are consolidated applications, meaning there's an overlay of general information, and underneath that are any sub-applications. For charter school planning and implementation, the consolidated application is called planning and implementation. Then there's a planning application and a charter school implementation application. And you would be completing the high level and then the information in each of the sub-applications prior to you being able to submit. Similarly for the consolidated application. In the case where it's a single application, when you select the chevron, only the application name will come down. Okay, now let's look at these two. DC Physical Activity for Youth. I don't see a create button for that. DC School Garden Grant, I don't see a create button for that. In this particular case, to create an application, you have to give it a project title. Again, a project title. So you'll enter a project title and you'll select the create button.
Are you able to change that title, or is it just once you create that thing?
Once you create it, it's created with that title. You can delete it if you like, but once you create it with that title, that's the title of the application. Okay? And the program office for the grant will have specific guidance on how to name the project, etc. Okay? But I just want you to become familiar with this opening to the navigation page, seeing these chevrons. If everything is collapsed, if this is all you see, that's fine. Okay? Just use your chevrons and the data will expand. You'll also see a select fiscal year. As you go forward with grant applications, you can, the system is starting with fiscal year 2015 grant applications. So from this year going forward, next year you'll see 15 and 16, and then 15, 16, 17. So you can always go back and select a grant application from a prior year. Okay? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go into what we're calling the central data section of the EGMS. A couple of things to note here. This layout is very similar. You'll see it for every grant within the system. You're going to read from left to right. The tab that has the white background is the tab that you're viewing. The tabs with the blue background are behind that. Okay? You'll see the applicant name, you'll see the specific application title, and the cycle. In this particular case, we are viewing an original application. If you have made an amendment to an application and you're looking at that amendment or you're working in that amendment, you'll see Amendment 1. If you see Amendment 1, you will know that the original application has been approved. You cannot create an amendment unless you have an approved original. If you see Amendment 2, that means the original application and Amendment 1 have been approved. You'll also see the year. That top right where you see central data, again, is another drop-down menu. In the case of a consolidated application, when you select that chevron, the sub-applications underneath the consolidated will show so that you can navigate to any one of those applications through that selection. You can return from this application back to the original navigation screen or back to your landing page.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is that all right? When you were speaking about the consolidated applications, when you see the subcomponents of consolidated,
Yes.
are you allowed to only apply or address one component, or is the requirement to address all the components under the
It's going to be based on the grant program. The grant program, if in the past you have been able to submit for one and not the other, that's still going to be the same. For the consolidated application, you know, you'll see the instructions when we get to the application, and it will tell you whether you have to submit for all or one. Okay, so what's similar on every grant that you're open? There's always an overview page. The overview page gives you, general understanding of what we're about to do, what section we're in, what's going on. So in this particular case for central data collection, we're requiring that central data collection is filled out by July 1st for the CONAP, Perkins, 21st Century, etc. Again, this central data is really administrative level contact information, and we'll go to that. Okay, which programs it affects, the purpose, links to any legislation, and then general information. Okay, I spoke a little earlier about learning support initiatives. Now, we changed this name 10 times from the start until now. It was at one point in time classroom support strategies, then learning support strategies. We think we finally settled on learning support initiatives. So when you see this on June 2nd, this LSS will be LSI. Okay? This ECSS, Early Childhood Support Planning, will be Early Childhood Learning Objectives. Okay? But what you're going to be able to do with those sections remain the same. So for those of you whose applications follow the learning support strategy, you are K-12, and you will have the opportunity to define up to 15 specific initiatives that is the focus of your organization. And what you're going to do is, when you get to your budget development section, you will be able to say, for this line item, it's going to support this specific initiative. Okay? So at the early planning level, what OSSI is trying to do is to understand what's important to you. What are your top 5, 10, 15? Okay? You'll have the ability to enter the number that you are going to select for your organization. So if your organization is going to have 10, then you'll type in 10 here, and it will open up 10 windows for you to put in your 10 objectives. In this particular case, we pre-populated with learning support strategy, Common Core standards, and you'll be asked to provide a brief description of what that initiative really means to you. Underneath that, you'll see a bunch of grant applications. Remember, this is a planning level exercise. So what OSSI is trying to understand is, based on your Learning Support Initiative number 1, which grants do you think you're going to direct money from to support that? We're not asking what percent of the grant funding. We're not asking you specific dollars. This is at a high level. If you get any of these grants, be it formula or competitive, are any of your grant dollars going to support your initiatives 1 through 15? For early learning support objectives, there will be 4 prescribed early learning support objectives for you to direct all of your budget activity toward. Same basic functionality. You'll see the 4 early learning support objectives. When you get to building your budget pages, you'll select which one of those objectives that budget line item is going to support. Central contacts. Again, at an administrative level, the office address, and this information is available to OSSI so they know where you are and the specifics of, who's in place now doing what. A couple of important things to note from this page. Wherever you see an asterisk next to text, that data field is required. In this particular case, your organization will put in a DUNS number and a SAM expiration date. Is everyone familiar with a SAM number? Okay, good deal. No? Okay, it's a System for Award Management number. It's an organization identifier. If you do not have one, you'll just select the link for System of Award Management. It'll take you directly to the site, and you can register for a SAM number. Yes?
If you have one and don't know that you have one,
Yes, you should be able to look it up on this SAM site. Yes.
Apparently, we had one,
Okay.
and no one can tell me what it is, and for a whole year, I have not been able to get through this process.
Okay. Have you tried to reapply for a SAM number on the site? And when you reapply for the SAM number, what happened?
Because it's the same organization name,
Mm-hmm.
I run into here,
Okay.
and I've been on the phone with people, and they've not been able to help.
The people at the SAM site? That's interesting. I don't know if...
You're right. I don't know what to tell you about that. I do know every year you're supposed to renew, update your information in SAM. But the people that should be able to help would be the administrators of the SAM system.
Okay. And then you can, once you get your number, you can put this in. Now, why is the SAM number important? It's important because OSSI cannot reimburse you for expenses if your SAM number is expired. So if your SAM number, for example, is expiring in November 15th, if you submit a reimbursement request December 15th and you haven't gone back in and updated your information, you will not be able to get paid for that reimbursement request until you go back and update your SAM information. Okay, so administrative office location, superintendent's name, business manager's name. Now, we're going to talk about assurances. Okay, I'm going to go back for just one moment. When the system launches on June 2nd, in this central data section, in addition to what you see here as central data, that application that we were just in, you're going to see a drop down for CONAP assurances and the IDEA Part B assurance as well. We're going to break it out separately, so if it's not applicable to your organization, you won't have to see them. Okay? For today, right now, they are still housed within our central data application. Okay? So we have, again, the white tab background is the area that we're in, assurances, and we're on the general assurances tab section. Functionality is going to be the same for assurances no matter which application you're in. At the top, there'll be a checkbox that says, by checking this box and saving the page, the applicant hereby certifies that he or she has read, understood, and will comply with the insurance listed below. Okay, so you'll check the box. You'll read and make sure you understand any of these assurances. You'll get to the bottom and you'll hit Save Page. Okay, remember the roles. Only the authorized representative has the authority to submit and attest to these assurances. When you're submitting an application, all of your assurances must be agreed to prior to you being able to submit an application. Okay, and again, whoever the authorized representative is can be anywhere they want to be. This is a purely web-based system. They can log on to the system from anywhere and approve assurances and submit. They don't have to be sitting in the room with you when you get all the final information in. For consolidated assurances, it's the same process, except you see there are a number of assurances required for the consolidated application. For those of you who will be doing formula-based, if you're doing the consolidated application for Title I Part A, Title II Part A, Title III Part A. Again, the format is the same. There's a checkbox at the top. You're going to read and make sure you agree, and you're going to save the page. Okay, it's the same functionality for assurances. Check the box at the top, go to the bottom and agree. Okay, same thing there. Okay, DCPS only for this particular additional assurances, and because we're not logged in as DCPS, I won't be able to see that. Equitable Services is DCPS only. IDEA Part B application has its separate assurances. Again, you're going to check the box. Scroll to the bottom. In this particular case, it's asking that you select one of these radio buttons. Okay? And then you'll go to the bottom and you'll save page. Once you get through your assurances, there'll be a page that says Assurances Agreement, and this assurances page is on every application. Once you check the box and agree to it, you will see the the checkbox will be pre-filled. And it'll say General Assurances, CONAP, IDA Part B, and also once you select the legal entity agrees, that date that you enter will come in here. So now when you apply to another grant application, you will see on the date that you agree to these central assurances. And if there are no additional assurances in that grant application, there'll be no more assurances to agree to. If that application does have specific assurances, you will see you agree to central assurances on this date, and now you're agreeing to the application-specific assurances.
Can you skip around to the next tab, or do you have to go in order?
You can do any way you want.
So you can do assurances last.
You can do that last. And again, the data entry role allows you to go in and do all the work. You can check the box on all assurances. but you will not be able to submit or agree to the insurance system. Okay? The system was designed by a company called MTW. MTW has this system instituted in 8 states. This is the 9th installation, so it's a fairly robust system, and we're configuring it specifically to OSSI. Now, grant allocation summary. I'm going to sign out of this site. When you first log in, if you don't have any formula grants, this is what you're going to see. You haven't been awarded any money, so there are no allocations for you. Okay? I'm going to log out of this new site and log into DCPS. We use the DCPS site kind of as a test bed while we're developing the site. I want you to see what this allocations tab looks like with information filled in. So we're logged in as DCPS just for this training session. Once you start getting awarded funding, again, this is central data. Think of this as high level. Everything is consolidated up to the central data level. When you go into the specific application, you'll see information specific to the application. Central data says, show me all the funding that you've received so far. You'll see current year funds, and you'll see prior year funds. One of the reasons OSSI decided to implement this enterprise grants management system is because in a number of cases, grant funds have lapsed for whatever reason. What the system is going to do is it's going to track any carryover funding from the prior year, assuming your grant program allows carryover. And it'll take that carryover from last year and add it to your budget for the 2015 fiscal year. And you'll see it, so that when you submit reimbursement requests, it's always looking for the oldest money first. Okay? And the attempt is to, in its best case, eliminate all lapsed funding. But this way you'll be able to see it all in one place. Not only you, but the program office will be able to see it. You'll be able to run spin reports, etc. throughout the year to help make sure you're spending your money fast enough so that it doesn't get taken away from you in the case of a single year allocation versus an application that allows you carryover. Okay? And again, for every program, you'll be able to track what you're doing. Central data, consolidated level information. Okay, and then I'll go to the grant summary tab. Okay, your grant summary tab is going to show on the left side which grants you've been awarded funding, and across the top what budget area. 100 is salary and benefits, 300 professional services, etc. OSSI is doing this across the board so that at any given time, if Dr. Morris Hughes is asked, so how much money are you spending on salary and benefits, this aggregates up to all the grant awards within OSSI. Everyone's using the same budget codes so that you can get centralized reporting that really makes sense. Okay, and for your organization, this level of reporting will make sense to you as well. You can really see where you're putting your grant dollars. Yes.
So, because it's a this,
yes.
And I guess my question is whether or not it will work with QuickBooks. Okay.
Well, remember, what this system does is it tracks what OSSI has awarded you funding, so it's tracking that. When you submit a reimbursement request, it's going to track that as well. So the question for those of you online was, does the system work with QuickBooks? And my answer is, this is not an accounting system per se. Your organization still needs an accounting system. When you submit reimbursement requests, backup information may be required. You're going to print that information out of your accounting system and attach it with a reimbursement request. Okay? The expenses for your organization will be tracked through your accounting system. This is more high-level tracking. How many gross dollars were you given? Okay? How much carryover funding do you have? How much money in reimbursement requests have you gotten from us? Okay? Now, this information, because will be available on a public site, the public's going to be able to see how you distributed your grant funding. Okay? The public will also be able to see how much in reimbursement requests you've submitted for. Okay?
And so you're saying that by organization they'll be able to tell?
Yes, by organization, specifically by organization. Yes. Okay? And again, we talked about this classroom support strategy, learning support strategy, which now will be learning support initiative. Okay, again, in this particular case, for DCPS, they had 8 or more learning support initiatives, and this is how their grant funding was distributed amongst those initiatives. And this is the same summary by object code. Again, at a high level, where did you spend your funding? So these will be your learning support initiatives, and there'll be similar functionality for pre-K in the early learning support objectives as well. Salary and benefits, etc. Okay, now I'm going to log back out of this site and go back to our new site. This is my navigation page, and I'm going to the Access Select, and I'm going back in Central Data. Okay, and I'm going to the Page Lock Control tab. Okay, so for Central Data, this Page Lock Control, for whoever has the authorized representative role, you can lock or unlock any page within Central Data. So once you're completed and you're good with it and your organization says, yes, that's good, you can lock all the pages so that the information is available for anyone to view, but no changes can be made. Okay, again, remember, data entry can enter anything. The authorized representative can lock it. You can lock Central Data. You can lock an application. Even though it hasn't been submitted, the authorized rep can lock the application if they don't want any more changes made to it. Okay? And then there's an application print tab. The system prints in 2 ways. If you want to print a copy of the current page that you're on, just select the printer friendly link and you can print this page on your printer. It will print this page as you see it. However, let's say you want to print out a complete application and distribute the parts to people. There's a function down to the left that says Request Print Job. You're going to select the button at Central Data because that's where we are. Now, when you select Central Data, it's going to show you all the sections within Central Data. this checkbox has been pre-filled. That means it's going to complete the entire application for you. If there's a section, if all you want is overview, you can deselect. Okay? But if you select, it's going to print everything, and you're going to press request print. Okay, now, nothing's going to happen at your printer. When you select request print, a request is going to the system that says, print an electronic version of this application. This spooled or batch printing is done every hour on the hour from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. And it'll be like that unless OSSI decides they want more frequent printing. Okay? So in this particular case, you'll see that on 5/21 at 10:05 a.m., I requested that this entire application be printed. Okay, so at 11:02, I can come back to this page and I will see that this request will move down to the completed print jobs section. Okay, if you hit request print at 2 minutes before the hour, 2 minutes after the hour, it'll be there. And you can select the link, and what will open up in your browser is an electronic version of the application. Okay? And with this electronic version of the application, anything that you've typed into that application will be printed. Okay? So there are no page numbers here, but it's tracking page numbers as part of the PDF application, and you can download and save that file if you like. Okay. Okay, let me go back here. Okay, so we've been through all the tasks. Again, just a general refresher. This format is going to be the same on any grant application that you see. There will be an overview page. There will be a tab strip. There may be a second or third or fourth tab strip, depending upon how much information is required for us to give you for that application. And it varies by application. But again, you're going to read from left to right. If the background is white, that's the tab that you're viewing. If it's blue, it's behind. Okay, it's 10:08. Let's take a 7-minute break. At 10:15, we will resume and we'll go into creating an application. Okay, so just a recap of the first portion of our training session. We learned that there's going to be a public login page, that there will be usernames and passwords for those organizations registered with OSSI. For some who came in a little later, OSSI sent out a notification a couple of weeks ago asking that you provide the names of users that you want us to preload into the system with their specific role. If you haven't, or if you need to add people, we'll have a representative from OSSI here when the session ends to allow you to add names or add your organization. We talked about user roles. Authorized representative being the role within an organization that can enter data, look at every page, but that particular role is the only role that can agree to assurances or actually submit an application or submit a reimbursement request. Then there's a data entry role that can put in data anywhere but cannot agree to assurances, cannot submit applications or reimbursement requests, and then the view-only role. Now we'd like to go in and actually create an application. So I'm going into my navigation page, and I'm going down to the available grants section. And for this particular case, we're going to go into the 21st Century application, and we're going to select Create. So now, this is an original application. So again, what do we see? Tab structure is almost identical to what we saw in Central Data. You're going to read from left to right. In this particular case, you always start with an overview page. What are we seeing here? Give me some general high-level information about this particular grant. This is the applicant's name. This is the application name. The cycle, original application, Amendment 1, Amendment 2. This will be the funding period. Over to the right, you see the drop-down by 21st Century. I'm going to select that. When you select it and the name drops down, that means there's only one application. There are no sub-applications underneath a consolidated level. Okay, so overview section, background information. This is 21st Century. Here's background information. Here's the purpose of the grant, links to particular guidance, and general information. Again, this is all information you're used to seeing on the paper-based application. Contact information. Now, this contact information section is different from Central Data contact. Think of Central Data as your administrative offices. Think of this contact as who do we need to contact if there are questions about this specific grant. Now, you may fill in the same information for every grant that your organization does the same, but in larger organizations where different people within the organization are responsible for a particular grant, this is where you're going to put that information in. One special feature of this contact information page, there's a checkbox up here. Now, we said originally that only authorized representatives can submit assurances, applications, or reimbursement requests. Well, similarly, when an application is rejected or asked for revised or resubmit or approved, that same person will be the one who gets notification. If they check this checkbox, it gives the authorized rep the ability to add more people to the notification distribution list. Okay? And they can add up to 5 email addresses. Okay? So it's really for the people who are responsible for tracking on a day-to-day basis. You want to make sure your email address gets attached here so that when the authorized rep gets notification, that you get it as well, and you're not dependent upon that person scrolling through their email or forgetting to tell you. Okay? And you can list up to 5. It's optional. So in this particular case, we want the grant manager contact, and just for this example, I'm going to fill out this page. Okay, and then the program contact. I'm going to do this, and okay, so I type in this information, and I'm going to hit Save Page. So what happens? The system is set up such that if you start typing information on a page and you hit Save, if there are required fields for you to fill out that were not filled out, you're going to get an error message. So in this particular case, it says grant manager information is required. Program contact information is required. I stated earlier that whenever you see an asterisk, it's a required field. In this particular case for grant manager contact, I didn't put an email address. So let me put in the email address here. And since a phone number is required and a fax number is required, now I'm going to hit Save Page again. I think I'm good to go. And I still have an error message. Program contact email must be a valid email address. So I'm going to go down to program contact and see that I forgot to put .com, .org, .net. And I'm going to complete that, and I'm going to save the page. Okay, I don't have any error messages. I didn't get any applause. I didn't get a message saying, congratulations, great job. Okay? This is not a positive affirmation system, meaning that if you do something incorrectly, you will get an error message. If you do something correctly and hit Save Page, you get nothing. Okay? What you want to be able to do is hit Save Page and get nothing. Okay?
I have a question.
Yes.
The grant manager contact, and you have 21st century program contact.
Mm-hmm.
It can be one and the same, if it's the same person.
It could be. It could be.
That's just so you'll have
Good morning.
people.
You can have two people or you can have one person. But working with the program offices, this is the information the program offices said they wanted to receive on this particular grant. And it's going to vary by grant application. And it's going to vary by the program office and what their requirements are.
But for the check all, where you can add up to 5 contacts,
Yes.
those folks wouldn't be contacted for information on the grant. They would just be notified.
It's only notification. It's only notification if there are 5 other people in the organization who are tracking whether an application has been submitted, rejected, approved, or if they want to track whether a reimbursement request has been submitted, rejected, or approved, you would select these folks. They may not be data entry folks. They may not have put the grant together, but they may be accounts payable people who you want notification, okay, we did get the award, let's set it up in our QuickBooks system. Or a reimbursement request was submitted and approved, let them know so that they can go, and if they have view-only role, for instance, but you want to let them know when activity happens, you'll put their names on this list. And when they see that a reimbursement request has been submitted, they can log into the system, go to that specific reimbursement request, and see how much was submitted. Okay? And again, this is purely optional. This is for you. The information down below is for OSSI. Funding distribution. In the case that you have a formula grant and you have been given an allocation, this page will show your allocation. I'm just going to quickly go to a formula application so you can see what this looks like. Some of you who don't have a formula grant, it's not going to apply, but just give me just one moment. So in the case of a formula grant where the program office has awarded you allocation already, when you go to that allocation tab, you'll be able to see the allocation that you've been awarded for the grant. In competitive grants, you don't get awards until after the award has been made. So that page is always going to be blank until after an award is made and your budget is set. Now you see, I just opened up this NCLB consolidated application. You see our central data section. This is the application we just created. And now this 21st century application is the application we were just in. So I'm going back into this application. And you see that the contact information that we put in before and saved is still there. It's important to note, if you enter information in a page and you do not save it, when you come back to that, if you navigate away from that page and come back, the data is going to be gone. Okay? So it's very important as you're going through an application, if you get to a page that requires you to input information and save it. At the end of the process, the computer will do a sweep back through the application to see if there are any areas that you were required to fill out information but didn't. So we went to a funding distribution page. In this particular case, it's going to be blank because no award has been made. When I go to program information is really the content of the application you're typically used to seeing. And it's going to vary by program. It's going to look different by program. In this particular case, it's going to say for criteria 1 program abstract, no points, meaning that when it's being reviewed, this is just a general explanation for you. Okay? Now, I'm not going to put anything in, and I'm going to say save page, and it's going to say, hey, you tried to save this page, but you can't because you didn't type in anything in this abstract description field. So as I type, you will see that it's counting characters. Each grant application, when narrative is requested, you will be given a different amount of characters for each section. You're trying to streamline the applications as much as possible. So 2,000 characters is typical, but you can have up to 7,500 characters, 5,000 or 7,500 characters, depending upon the program. So I've typed in gibberish. This system does have a spell check function. So, of course, everything I put in was gibberish, so it's going to outline it. But it does not correct for grammar. Okay? So just keep that in mind. And again, as we go through each tab section, it's designed based on the program requirement. In this particular case, you're going to select a radio button. Now, before they may have asked you to write answers in, but in this particular case, translating from paper to web-based application, it's radio button. So we're going to select radio buttons. Okay. I don't feel like putting anything in this description field, and I'm going to see if I can save the page. Okay, good. I saved the page, and I'm good. So now, for number 4, I'm going to say no this time. and I'm going to save the page. Question 4 was answered no. Therefore, you must provide a justification description. Okay? So we've worked with the program offices to make sure what are they looking for when they receive application. And these are the type of instructions you're going to get throughout the application. If you check an answer and they say, now you have to explain it, you'll get this type of message. And all you'll do is you'll come down in this section. You'll type something in, and you can save the page. Okay, so important to note, the system is checking to see if you type something in. It didn't check to see if you typed in 1 character or 1,000 characters. It didn't even read what you put in. It's important that you note the system's going to check that something was done, but it's not reading the content that you're entering. If you're required to upload a document, the system is going to say, yes, a document was uploaded. It can't read what the document was or if it was the right document. It's just going to read that you did upload a document. And you'll see going through these sections, they're very similar. Okay? So based on the requirement of the program office and the application, you'll go through and you'll fill this stuff out. Like I said, the content's going to be very similar to what you're used to seeing. In this particular case, it's asking for an attachment. Okay, now you're going to see in this particular file, we created a new application, but the system registers that we've been in this application before. I've tried 4 times to create this application. Each time I uploaded a file, and now I'm back at try number 4 to get this application right. We cannot delete files from the system, but in this text box it says, you know, if you've uploaded any files, please provide a description, and you could also note that the file is dated revision 0, revision 1, revision 2, please disregard. Okay, so now we're going to choose a file. Okay, when you select the file or press open, you'll see the file name. Okay, you have to actually upload the file. A file upload required. Okay, so now you'll see my file was uploaded. Okay, and let me see if I can save page now. Okay, so it says a file upload is required for each attachment. Okay, so it's just saying everywhere I have an upload, I have to upload a file. And once I do that, I will be able to successfully save the page. Now, we're going to talk about budgeting. So this budget template is followed on every grant program that we have within the EGMS system. Again, the background is white, detailed planning expenditures, and we're on the overview budget. The overview budget is going to tell you specifics about budgeting for your particular grant application. In this particular case, 21st Century application requires a 3-year program budget to be submitted. Applications that receive awards will submit reimbursement requests for the first year portion of that program budget only. Okay, and as we go through, I'll show you what that really means. Okay, so each budget section has salaries and benefits, professional services, property services, equipment, supplies and materials, fixed property costs, other objects. There are some grants that do not allow salaries and benefits or property services or professional services. So in those particular grants, you won't see those tabs. So now we're in the salary and benefits section. Again, this is where you're going to build your budget to submit for your requested monies. And you'll see right now across the top, in 100, I'm in salaries and benefits. 300 is professional services, 400, etc. The allocation in this particular case is 0 because nothing's been awarded. We're going to build the grant request here. And if we come down to the bottom of the page for salaries and benefits, it's looking for a name, a position title, program category. We're going to say this person is providing instruction. Now, remember we talked earlier about these learning support initiatives or early learning support objectives. You're going to see a drop-down window that's going to say, here are the 5 learning support initiatives that you determined for your organization was where you were going to focus all of your funding. You're going to pick one of these category areas. And I'm going to say Common Core Standards. And that's what this budget, that's what this individual, this is where he's going to spend most of his time. If he's broken out in a couple of different areas, what we're really looking for is where is his primary responsibility going to be. His or her, and I'm going to say 80 hours a month, and I'm just going to say support. And I'm going to say for the first year of this application, we're paying this person $20,000. And I'm going to add a second person. I'm going to add Jane. She's a manager, and she's actually going to be managing support services, and she's going to be focused on needs assessments. She's actually going to work 120 hours a month. And she's going to get $40,000. Now, the system is set up to show 10 items. When you get to this 10, if you need 10 more, it'll pop up. What we're trying to get you in the habit of doing is when you get to 10, save page. When you get to your next 10, save page, just so the system doesn't time out on you. At the bottom of this sheet, you're going to be able to do a couple of calculations. In this particular case, you could see we have no budget information in. So I'm just going to select the Calculate Totals tab. Calculating totals is an on-page function, and what it does is it says, okay, so far you've developed a $60,000 budget in this category. Okay? Calculate totals is only working to do a function on the page. You have not saved your information. Okay? So now I can save page. Okay? And in this particular case, for 21st century, you're getting a warning. This is not an error message. An error message will not allow you to submit an application. A warning message will allow you to submit an application at your own peril. Okay, meaning in this case, the sum of all planned expenditures to budget category 100, which is salary and benefits, cannot exceed 50% of the total amount budgeted prior to submitting your application. That means that salaries and benefits has to be 50% or less of my total budget. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the professional services budget page. Okay, and as I move across budget pages, you see I saved $60,000 budget in salary and benefits. So now I'm going to add budget to my professional services tab. I'll also note on this particular application where you see site, the system is set up to allow you to budget in 2 ways. You can either budget in aggregate, meaning for the entire organization, or you can budget by site. Each application has specific budgeting requirements, and it will let you know whether you have to budget by site or budget in aggregate. When you see 000, that's the central office code. And if you have different sites, when you select this drop-down, you'll see a list of all the sites that you could attribute the budget to. Yes.
Good question. So that site-specific button is only in some budget categories?
It's in all of them.
Okay. And then where do we build that list of sites?
It's going to be preloaded in the system. Okay, so anyone who's currently registered with OSSI as an LEA or a community-based organization, we've already put the information in the system. Okay, so we know how many sites you have, whether you have 1 or 3 or 10. And on the grant application, if it's required that you budget by site, when you select this drop-down menu, you will see all your sites.
If we need to, like we're expanding, for example, this summer, if we needed to have a site added, we would contact our
You contact OSSI,
program officer.
right, so we can add that site to the system. Okay?
I have a question about
Yes.
the salary page.
Yes, I'm going to go back to the salary page. Yes.
So you said that when you're adding individuals, select rates in the majority of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're split 50-50 in 2 categories, can you add them twice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And if one person handles like all of that, then
Yes.
the name will be on each line.
Yeah, it's really meant for, if someone spends 80% of their time doing something, you don't want to have an 80 and 20, but if it's really 50-50, you can enter the person's name twice or 3 times or 4 times. This is really for you as a program office if you're spreading them across different learning support initiatives, for lack of better terminology.
So I say salary, where's the benefit portion?
It's built in. In this particular case, it's built in. Salary and benefits is built in as a total number. Okay? Some applications, salaries and benefits are being split out, or they're requesting the % of the number that's attributable to benefits. But it's really done program by program.
So for something like this, it'd be up to us to determine the benefits portion that we're adding to the salary.
Yes. And, on your worksheet that you're developing, you may develop on an Excel spreadsheet a salary column and a benefits column and a total. In this particular application, what they want to see is the total number. Okay, so I'm going to add professional services. I'm going to say transportation. My program category is going to be student transportation, and it's going to be for family community support. And I'm going to say, in this case, this is going to be a $70,000 line item. I'm going to calculate totals. So when you calculate totals, you'll see that you've budgeted now $130,000. On the left side, I'm going to save page. And when I come down, I'll see that now I have $130,000 in cost with an 8% indirect cost rate. This is the amount of indirect cost that you can have for this particular grant application. And it will calculate your indirect cost as you go along. Okay? And again, you see,
I'm sorry.
Yes.
You're saying that the indirect cost rate will be pre-calculated to
Yes, at yes, at 8%. And again, we go back up. 100 is salary and benefits. We budgeted 60. Under professional services, we budgeted 70. You go through the rest of the tabs, and you will see your budget as you're building it. So far for year 1, remember, in this application, you're putting the details for the year 1 budget. Okay? And when you go through the other tabs, I'm just going to quickly move through the other tabs, you'll see it's the same layout. Okay, these are the column headings: salary and benefits, professional services, property services, equipment are similar across all grant programs. Some of the requested data may change underneath the tab based on the program requirements. Okay. So once you get filling out your budget, you'll come over to budget summary. And you'll see that for this particular first year budget, you budgeted $60,000 in salary and benefits, which is 46% of your budget. And you did instruction and support services. And under professional services, you budgeted $70,000 for student transportation. Okay? Now, in this particular case, because this grant program requires you to submit a 3-year budget, it's taking you to a budget summary page. Okay? So this is what we did for year 1. In this particular grant program, the year 1, year 2, and year 3 totals have to equal. But the year 2 and year 3 totals don't have to be in the same distribution as year 1. So I have $130,000 in year 1. In year 2, I'm going to say my 130 is here, and in year 3, I'm going to calculate my totals. Okay, my total number matches from year 1, year 2, year 3. And I'm going to save the page. And just for this example, let me try something here. My year 3 number is now less, and let me see if I can save the page. No. Okay? So, what the system is trying to do is take away all the typical places that we make errors so that when your grant application is being reviewed, the program office can spend more time viewing content. And on your side, it's trying to give you some checks and balances along the way so that you can make sure you submit a completely accurate application.
So for years 2 and 3, you didn't have to do the detailed budget?
No. What's going to happen in this case, once you get to the end of year 1, you're going to be issued what's called a continuation grant. The continuation grant will give you the opportunity to create a budget for that year. Now, if we made this year 2 and year 3 the same budget, and when I got my continuation application, I would just say submit. I don't want to make any changes. I'm spending the money the same way. You just hit submit, and the same category details that you had in your original budget will be in place for that year 2 budget. And you'll get a continuation application for year 3. You can keep the same budget, or you can adjust it at that time. Okay? And once your application has been submitted, during the year, you can submit an amendment to your application if you need to move monies from one budget category to another. Okay? It's going to be very important as you're building your budget to think through how you're going to be spending the money, because when you get to reimbursement request, if you did not have money in a budget category, you will not be able to submit an expense item for repayment. Okay? And we'll get into an example of that.
So where's the budget not at?
Once you complete an application and you have application approved, then you can submit an application amendment. You'll just go to the same tab where we said create an application, and you'll see create amendment. And when you create an amendment, a new application will open already populated with the original application's information. Make the changes and hit submit, and that will go immediately to the Aussie program person in charge of your application for review. Okay. So we're going to correct this. Save the page. Okay, so I have no errors. Yes.
So why did it put in the record?
Well, this is budget, right? This is total. This is your total budget. Okay. So now I said earlier that applications can have application-specific assurances. In this particular case, in addition to the general assurances that are in your central data area, this application also has its own assurances. So there are program-specific assurances, and again, you check the box, you scroll to the bottom, and you save page. Organization-specific assurances, you check the box, you scroll to the bottom, you save page. And then this assurances agreement. Okay, this assurances agreement says that you agree to program-specific assurances and organization assurances. Okay? In central data, it does not have a date. That means we have to go back to central data and agree to our general assurances. And once you do that, that date will populate here. And only the authorized representative, again, can agree to those assurances. So once you've agreed to assurances in central data, if it's required, you will see it here on the application. If it's not, you'll see program specific. And once you select legal entity agrees, then that date will be populated here. Okay, so now we have our submit tab. Okay, now I'm going to go log back out because we didn't complete a lot of information here. I'm going to go back out to another application. Okay. So you ask how would you be able to submit amendment? Once you have a completed application that's been accepted, when you open up your navigation page, you'll see amend, where you can select amend, and it will pull up a new amendment. It'll copy the most current information into a completed application, then you'll make the necessary changes. In this particular case, I'm going to open an application that was returned for changes. I said we've gone through our application. We think we have everything caught. We think we got all the information on every page. The system has this function called consistency check. What consistency check does is it will go back through the entire application and identify if you missed any of the required fields. It's not checking for the goodness of your content. It's checking to make sure anytime you were required to submit information or any time that there was an attachment required that you fulfill those requirements. And you'll press consistency check. Now this consistency check takes up to 45 seconds, depending upon how many people are on the system at any one time. I said earlier, for competitive applications, if it's due at 2 o'clock on Friday, literally just before 2 o'clock on Friday is your last moment to hit the submit button. You must do a consistency check before you hit submit. And when you do a consistency check, when it makes the sweep, anywhere that you have information that's missing, it's going to pull it up for you. Now, why are we wasting time doing this, right? Okay, well, the big feature for you as the applicant is you'll no longer get, we're sorry your application returned because you didn't have the attachment. Oh, we're sorry you didn't fill out this piece of the application. We can't do anything with you. This is really a function for you to go through and check to make sure you have put something in every required field. Again, it's not reading the value of the content. It's reading that something was done in that field. Every action that was required for this grant was taken. Okay? If you navigate away from this page now, let's say you read your error messages and you go back to another page, and you say, okay, what were those things again? When you come back to submit, those error messages are gone. Okay, you have to run the consistency check again to see them again.
I have a question.
Yes.
Concerning the question I think that the sister asked, regarding the indirect cost,
Yes.
when you look at the budget, it shows the allocation that I put in the budget, and then the system calculated my indirect.
It calculated the amount of indirect that you could take.
Okay. So when will that be determined? The award itself, or should I be asking for my specific indirect cost rate? Or
Well, the system, OSSI has preloaded 8% as your indirect cost rate across the board, unless something up to 8%, unless something specifically is agreed to by OSSI.
Now, okay, so what about the billing side? When you talk about the payments,
On the billing side, you will be able to bill for indirect costs up to the percent of the grant amount you're billing for at that time. So if you're only getting reimbursed for 10% of the grant amount, you can't bill for 20% of the indirect cost that you built in. You can only bill for 10%.
You mean, when we say 10%, you mean that that's what that particular field had indicated for that grant? Pre-populated, right?
It's going to say how much you can have in indirect cost. But when you submit a reimbursement request, it's going to allow you to draw down your indirect expenses in proportion to how much funding you're requesting back. Okay, so on your first submittal, if you're only submitting for 10% of the cost, you can't submit for 20% of your indirect expense.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that.
Okay.
But in my request, I'm asking for my actual.
Yes, you'll be able to put in
that portion.
That's correct. That's correct.
That's what I was trying to be clear on.
That's correct. And I'll go back to that for a moment. Okay. And again, after you clear up your errors, these buttons that you see now for lock application, unlock application, for the authorized representative, you will be able to lock or unlock the application anytime along the way. If you think you have it set and you don't want any more changes made, you hit lock. Data entry people will not be able to go in and make any changes. Okay? And once you do a consistency check and it says there are no errors in your application, you will see the submit button and you'll just press submit. And yes?
Okay, so you're seeing the error. Can you click on there, or do you have to go back?
No, you have to go back through. So you can just do a print screen or write down what the errors are, go back to them. You can run this consistency check as often as you like, okay, until you see the submit function. Okay, and again, as you're moving through the application, if you hit the save button on every page and you clear all the errors on that page before you move on, when you get to this consistency check, you should be fine. Again, this function is really more for you to make sure that you didn't miss anything. Okay? And on the OSSI side, the people who spent time going through and checking to make sure you didn't miss anything can now spend more time actually reading your application. Okay, let me go back for one moment.
Who will be contacted if it's not working properly?
OSSI has set up a help desk, so there will be a phone number for the help desk. There will be an email number for the help desk. So there are two types of things that can happen. One, what do you mean, what do you want on this page? That's a program question. If something is not functioning correctly, that's a help desk question. Okay? You can't call the help desk to ask what do they mean by this on this page. They're not set up to answer that type of question for you. That's really a program question. But if you say, I've done my consistency check, I don't get any errors, and I don't see my submit button, then they're probably going to say, what role do you have? If you say, well, I have data entry role, I just finished doing everything and made sure the application is ready, they will say the data entry role will not see a submit button. only the authorized representative will see a submit button. Okay? Or I've done everything, it's typically going to be you didn't sign your assurances, or there was an error message along the way. And again, the system is going to prompt you as you save page to correct any errors, and as your final check, the consistency check is going to sweep the entire application for any missed fields.
And will the authorized representative get an email or confirmation once it's submitted?
Yes. Yes. And if there were, remember that contact page that says you can add up to 5 names? If you check that box and added 5 additional emails, everyone on that chain will get the same notification.
If a lot of people are submitting applications at the same time, will it slow it down? Because I've had issues with other grant programs. Everyone is submitting by the deadline at that time. And
no, what may take a few more seconds is the consistency check, and that can take up to 45 seconds to run. But once you hit submit, it's done. The information is already housed in the system. Okay? And that includes any upload. So all your uploads have to be attached. If you don't have an upload attached and it's required, you will get that message in a consistency check. If it's something optional that you forgot, you will not get an error message in consistency check because it was optional. Okay, you asked about the indirect expense. So as of this time, I could have budgeted up to $9,629.63 in indirect expense. On these particular budget pages, I didn't request any indirect costs. I didn't put it in my budget. So in this particular case, I'm going to do $5,000 here. I'm going to calculate my totals. Okay, and I'm going to save my page. And I'm going to go professional services. Okay, so, as you see, as I'm scrolling from page to page, so I'm on professional services tab. The same $5,000 that I entered in the prior page is here. So far on this grant application, this is so that you can see how much, so right now, let's do this. Let's say 9629.63. Okay. Okay, so now in my budget summary, you see I budgeted 60 and 70 plus indirect costs. Okay? And now if I go back to, so we save page. Now I'm going to go back to my budget summary. Okay, so here is my budget summary. And you'll see this is the indirect cost that it's bringing over. Okay?
Yeah, that's what it was a little confusing.
No, that's fine. I should have pointed that out.
And the other side.
No, that's fine. And similarly, on your reimbursement request, it's going to tell you up to how much you can bill for at the time that you're submitting a reimbursement request. Okay?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, when I go back over to my program budget summary again, remember they're looking for a 3-year budget. I'd have to put in the same amount of indirect cost for the year in order for it to match. Okay? All right, it's 11:06. Let's take a 6-minute break. Actually, no, let's come back at 11:15, and then we'll go into a reimbursement request review. Okay, guys. All right. So now we want to start our last section. So we've just gone through the application cycle. We started with central data, where we put in our central office level information. We signed our global assurances, and whether you are responsible for phase 1 assurances for CONAP or IDA Part B, you've agreed to those. You're ready to go. First step in logging in the system. Then we selected an application that we were interested in creating. We selected the drop-down button to see whether it was consolidated or a single application, or whether a program name was required. Then we hit the Create button. Once we hit the Create button, the application came up as a blank. We went through every tab, including building the budget, running a consistency check, and you didn't see the Submit button because we didn't have all the errors taken care of. Okay? So again, I'm going to say this again. If your application is due at 2 o'clock on Friday, and you see 2 o'clock on your screen, you will not see your Submit button. Submit button disappears as of the time that the application is due. So if you're in the middle of running a consistency check and you have not hit Submit, you're out of luck. Okay? This is not a positive affirmation system, meaning there will be no bells and whistles when you successfully save a page. You will get errors, though, if you try to save a page and you either left information out or was entered incorrectly. Okay? So now, what I want to do before we get into a reimbursement process, let me go back to DCPS for just a moment. Okay, so for the purposes of this example, I'm just going to use the consolidated application. Remember I said when you submit an application on a competitive application, there are several potential outcomes. One, you'll get notification that your application was not accepted because the content wasn't worth reading, okay, or wasn't a good application. So the initial reviewer reviewed it and decided to return it. Second potential outcome is, congratulations, you've been awarded a grant in the exact amount that you submitted. Once you receive that notification, you'll be issued a GAN, and you can start encumbering your funds. The third potential outcome is, congratulations, you've been awarded money for this grant, but it's different than the amount you submitted in your application. It could be more. They found more money or didn't have as many applicants as they thought, so they have now more money to award. So they will ask you to revise and resubmit your application. If the budget amount that they want to give you is more or less than you submitted, you will see this return for changes on the status of your application. Okay? So initially it's going to be not submitted. Then it will be approved, and then it will be returned for changes. And when it's returned for changes, you know, in the past, you'd have to try to find somebody on the phone. They can't contact you. You can't contact them. One of the great things about this system is it allows you to see what information someone needs to pass to you in order to make a change. So in this particular case, I have an application, which is an amendment. Okay? And again, I said if you're on Amendment 1, you know you have an approved original application. In this particular case, we wanted to make a change, so we submitted Amendment 1, and they returned it for changes. If I select Review Summary, I will be able to see who reviewed my application and who requested a change. In this particular case, this application had 3 reviewers that rejected it. In your case, in a competitive, you will see someone approved it and then someone sent it back to you. Who sent it back, the status, and the date. And for this purpose, I'm just going to say I want to see what this first reviewer had to say and why I was rejected. So I select the radio button, and then I select Review Checklist. Another window is going to pop up. And the window that's going to pop up is actually the review checklist that the person was looking at when they were looking at your application. Okay? And you'll see in this particular case, answer number 4, the effective staffing strategy summary is comprehensive. No, not enough detail. In the case of your application, you'll see a window that pops up that says, please revise your budget by $20,000. We've increased your budget amount by $20,000. Or please reduce your budget amount by $20,000. You'll then, so now that you know what the comment is, you can close this window, okay? And we want to go back to the application. Okay, and now we want to open it. And now we can make whatever changes were suggested. In this case, we'll go back to our budget section, consolidated app. Okay, we'll go back to the detailed plan expenditures, and we'll go to our budget, and we will add $20,000 in our budget because that's what they said they wanted us to do. Or we'll take $20,000 out of our budget because that's what they said they wanted us to do, and then we'll hit resubmit. Resubmit.
And that's what's going to be, that's the button we see, the resubmit button.
Yeah, when you go back to submit, okay, this is a consolidated app, so it's at the consolidated level. You come back to submit, you do a consistency check, and then the submit button will be there and you'll hit submit. Okay? So now,
So if you weren't awarded the grant and you were able to see the comments of why, as you just showed before,
yes.
it would be a lot more detailed. Than
Oh yeah, this is just our test environment. So we're just putting in, short shrift answers just to get through the exercises.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Because you went back to look like the original screen of when we were submitting the application,
Mhm.
once somebody asks for return for something, that submit button will reappear now? Because remember,
Once you do another consistency check. And remember, once you submit an application, you can only submit an amendment because that original application will be frozen. Okay, even to the authorized representative. Once you submit it to OSSI for review, that particular application is frozen. You cannot make any more changes to it. If you're going to do something else, you have to create an amendment to that application. Yeah, that's why it reappears. And when you create an amendment, all the content from that original application is pre-filled in the amendment. You don't have to fill it out again. You're just going in to make whatever changes necessary prior to you doing a consistency check and hitting submit again. Okay? So with reimbursement request, you have to have an approved application in order to submit a reimbursement request. So in this particular case, I'm going back to my original application, and I'm going to select payments. Okay? And in the case of this application, which is CONAP, I have 4 applications within this consolidated. In your case, you're only going to see 1 column of numbers for a single application. If it's consolidated, it will be broken down by the sub-application. But for example, for Title 1A, if this were your grant, you just see 1 column of information. Okay? So these are your current grant year allocations, any pending reimbursement request, completed request, and your remaining balance. Okay, now in the current system, once you submit a reimbursement request, it goes to PTS, then to PASS, then to STORE. 3 different accounting systems linked together here at OSSI. One of the nice things about going to this EGMS-based system is once the reimbursement request is approved within the system, it then goes to a batch payment processing queue, and OSSI will determine whether that queue is submitted to SOAR twice a week, once a month, twice a month. Okay, so you will go directly from this EGMS system into SOAR. And on a daily basis, the system is going to communicate with SOAR to see if any payments were made and what's the status. So you'll never have to make a phone call to understand where your stuff is. Okay, so now we want to get a little bit more detail on this. So we select the View Reimbursement Request. Now, I have to choose a program because I'm in a consolidated application. If we were in a singular application, you wouldn't have to choose the application, you go right to it. So in this particular case, I want to see the status of my reimbursements for the Title 1A grant application. So you can see reimbursement request numbers, date created, the date range that the expense was created, the date that I submitted it, the date that OSSI final approved it, its status, and the date that it was status. Okay? When you log in to your site through EGMS, you have access to view the entire history of your reimbursement request for any grant application that was started within the system. Okay? You no longer have to call anyone to find out where you are.
I don't see my direct deposit date.
Hold on, hold on. I'll get to that. I'll get to that. I got you covered. I got you covered on that. Okay, so in this particular case, I'm going to, I can open an existing request. I can create a new request. I can delete a request, or I can go to a review summary. If it was returned for review, just like we click the review summary on the application tab, I can click review summary here. Yes.
As far as reimbursement, so and I guess allowable costs, what if OSSI rejects? Okay, we're not going to pay $20 for this, and it's now different from what we requested. When we get a notification saying that okay, your amount is no longer $9,000, instead of $8,000.
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
Okay. So give me just a minute. So in this particular case, let's just open. We started working on a request yesterday, and now we're going to come back to it. So I'm going to open Reimbursement Request 15. Okay. So this looks pretty familiar. Remember we set up our budget in the application? What do we see across the top? The budget categories, and whatever we've built in our budget is what you're going to see here. Okay? You can submit a request against any budget category that you had in your approved budget. Okay? So for this particular exercise, let's do something wrong. I'm going to say, this isn't salary and benefits, this is really professional services. And I'm going to say my program category is 20 support services. My program activity is administration. I'm in the CONAP, it's site-based budgeting, so I can go down to a particular school to spell out where this expense is located. And I'm going to say this is support services. Okay? And I'm going to say I'm requesting $10,000 against this line item. I think I'm good. I'm down to the bottom. And I'm going to, first let me calculate my totals. Let's say I have 100 line items and I do a calculate totals. Again, calculate totals is an on-sheet function. Does not save. I come down. Okay, here's my $10,000. We talked about indirect cost. Okay, here's where I would insert how much indirect cost I'd like to bill. And I'm going to say this is from May 1st to May 31st. Okay, here's our SAM expiration date. So we'll assume that we're within that date, and I'm going to put 11, 15, 14. Okay, in this particular case, this particular program for CONAP, the program team has decided that summary and detailed expenditure reports are required. It varies by program. Some program offices make it optional. Some program offices make it mandatory. Okay? If you submit it with the request, it will be there for you or anyone else to view at any time. So when the program team comes out to do a site audit and they want to look at reimbursement request number 15 and the supported materials, you can log on to the system, you can open this up, and you can open the file that you attach with this reimbursement request. Okay? So I'm not going to, I don't have time, I forgot to upload a file, I'll upload it later, and I go to Save Page. Now, we said before, when you save a page, it's going to tell you if you have errors or not. In this particular case, my expense duration cannot be after 5/21, meaning I can't bill for expenses in the future. This is this particular program. Okay? It also said that for Title 1A and 300 professional services, my budget amount was 0. Okay? So I can bill against Category 100, but nothing else. I can bill against 10 instructions and set aside, but nothing else. Now, if during the program year I find out that I need to change my budget, I go back to my application, I create an amendment, I adjust my budget, and I resubmit that for review and approval. Once that's reviewed and approved, your revised budget will show up here. Okay? And also said that I can't bill object code 2300. I didn't have any budget in that. So let's see if we can correct those things. So I'm going to say, all right, it wasn't professional services, it was actually salary and benefits, and it was instruction, and it was non-set aside. And again, these drop downs are going to change by program. Okay, so it's similar, but when you get to develop your budget in your application, you'll see what these drop downs are. And whatever I said before, when you're developing your budget, you have to think, when I'm starting to reimburse, is that expense going to be covered? Okay, and that's where you have to create the budget up front so that you can bill for it later. Okay, and our expenditure description is good, the amount is good. I need to change my date to the 21st. I need to upload a file. And I need to save my page.
So you can only upload one file?
No, you can upload multiple files. Okay, now, on page we can calculate totals. We can save the page. We didn't get any error messages, so I'm good to submit. Remember, only the authorized representative will see the submit button. If you're a data entry role, you can do all the work. Okay, you can save the page, but you cannot submit. Okay, this means someone is legally binding the organization by saying, I agree in accordance with all my assurances that these expenses are warranted for this grant program. Okay, so now I want to certify submit. Okay, oh, SAM expiration date was not valid. So let's go down to that. What do we put in for our date? Let's do 11/15/2014 and see if that works. Again, I have to save page. let's see if we're good to go now. SAM expiration date was not valid of the expenditure state in. Okay, so I have to go back to central data to get my SAM expiration date. And again, that's in central data. I can put in the SAM expiration date, 11/15/2014. I'm not going to be able to save this page because I have to have all this information filled out. Okay. All right, guys. So we were in request 15. If I had my SAM information date correct and I filled out all the categories correctly, then once I hit submit, I would get a message that says this application has been submitted. You will not be able to reopen it and make any edits. The way the system operates, once you submit it to OSSI, that application, be it a grant application or reimbursement request, is frozen. Any changes you're going to make via creation of an amendment. You can have as many amendments as you need. The system doesn't have any limitations on that. Okay? And then when you go back to this page, you will see a date that it was submitted to OSSI and the status. Okay? Now, someone asked, well, you know, once you get paid, will it give me all the payment information? This is from Oklahoma. The reason you don't see any information on the system today is because we haven't processed any payments through SOAR. But once your payment request has been approved and paid, okay, approved means OSSI has approved it for payment. Paid means money has been transferred from SOAR to either a check or an electronic payment. When you open that reimbursement request to view it, all the payment information will be on the upper right-hand side. You'll see any routing information, the date, the time, etc. No phone calls required. You will be able to track all of your reimbursement requests from this window. Okay? It's important to note here on reimbursement requests. Let's say you have 100 line items that you've submitted. And upon review, so you put in 100 line items and you submit it to OSSI for review. They send it back saying that 2 of your 100 line items we are not going to approve. Let's say you need more backup information, or I don't agree that it's applicable here. You have a couple of options. The system only pays for 100% complete applications. So I can delete those 2 that are in question and immediately hit resubmit, and my program officer can say approved. I can delete those 2, create a second reimbursement request with those 2 items, satisfy the conversation that we're having around it, and you can resubmit it an hour later, a day later, a month later. Okay? But the system does not pay you partial. It's either all or nothing. Much easier way to track if the reimbursement request says that you're supposed to get paid $100,000 for 98 items, you're getting paid $100,000 for 98 items. Those 2 items that were not approved that you deleted, they will stay deleted until the end of time unless you go back in and create a separate payment requisition or add them on the next payment requisition. You can submit as many payment requisitions as you like. There are no limits within the system. You could submit one once a day, once a week, once a month, once a year. Okay? It's all electronic. It's all online. If something is rejected, you will immediately get notification. And remember back when we filled out that application and the box said, do you want to add 5 other people to get notifications? If the authorized representative does not select 5 other people, everyone in the organization will be wondering where's the money. Okay? So it's very important that when you're completing that section of the application, whoever needs to know about application submission status or reimbursement submission status, just add their email. They may have view-only roles within your organization, but at least more than one person now will be getting a status notification of what's going on. Okay? Any questions on reimbursement request? No? All right, so we've been through central data. We've been through submitting an application, and we've been through reimbursement requests. Key takeaways for you. After today, requesting new credentials will be available after June 2nd, and it can take up to 48 hours. There are a couple of people in the room who aren't sure whether their organization is registered with OSSI or have some additional people they want to add to the list. Nancy is in the back of the room. You can see Nancy when we're finished, and she can take care of that for you. Always remember to save the page before navigating away. Once you navigate away from the page, if you didn't save, it's gone. Correct errors before you leave. If you don't, you will see them again when you do a consistency check. You must perform a consistency check before you can submit an application, and it could take up to 45 seconds to run. If the application is due at 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon, if you're sitting at your desk and you see 2 o'clock come up on your computer and you have not submitted, close the laptop down and go home. It's over. It's done. Yes.
And that goes for the actual grant application and reimbursement.
Reimbursements have no time limit. You can submit reimbursement requests anytime, anytime, any day, with whatever frequency your program office will allow.
Yeah, actually, that's just, during the times that are indicated of the grant program as indicated in your game. So I'm trying to submit like something for FY14 in December. Does that make sense for reimbursement?
Yeah, the timing will be spelled out. So you can't submit something. We are in May. You can't submit something in May that happens next month, but if you're in May, you can submit something that happened in January, February, March, April, right? Yes.
The timer you keep referring to at 2 o'clock, it's going to be on the grant page, right? So not
it will be
our time, because mine can say 2:01 and other
yeah, it's going to be, you'll see it in the system.
Okay.
But if you're worried about that, if we're messing around with 1 minute, whether my clock is right or your clock is right, you're in trouble. Well, let's go back to the system and see. Let me see if I see a clock here. No, see, I don't see a clock here, right? But on my computer, I have a clock. So, and let me just go back to an application for a moment. That's a good question. I just want to make sure. Yep, I don't see a time here. Yep. So there is no time listed here. So I'm going to ask that question. And for everyone who's left their email address, I'll have an answer for that question. But usually your browser has the time. That's not your watch time, not your clock time. See down here in the bottom right?
That comes to time.
This time?
Okay.
This is, right?
Did you say the submit button would disappear once 2 o'clock is
The submit button disappears at 2 o'clock exactly. So even if you're in the middle of a consistency check, if the time has elapsed, you're out of luck.
One more question.
Yes, go ahead.
I guess for budget renewal for like the next year, you have a schedule saying that when the application, I don't know if you already said it.
Yes, if you're going to be completing a continuation application,
Okay.
that will be listed as continuation application and its due date. Okay, so typically,
Even though we're just not using the system.
yes, we are creating continuation applications. And what we're doing is we would be pre-filling information into an application for you to select and approve. Okay? Yes.
Is your company going to try to integrate this with the rest of the district? I don't know.
One hurdle at a time. No, I mean, OSSI is really trying to do its best to come up with an integrated approach. One, to make it easy for you as users to manage the grant programs that are available. And also from OSSI, for their staff to be able to manage how well we're doing spending our funds. Okay, so, you know, in the morning when you get to your office, you're going to log in and you're going to see if any new applications became available. Okay, and you may navigate away, you may log out from there. If nothing new is on the system, you may navigate away. But you can always log in, view the status, look at reimbursement request. You know, it will be your site. Okay?
So the district needs it. I just finished with the Board of Health case.
Really? I'm sure. I'm sure. Thank you all very much for attending. If you have any other questions or if you have questions about preloading users, please see Nancy before you leave. Thank you very much.